The Night House was directed by David Bruckner and stars Rebecca Hall. The movie is approximately 1 hour and 47 minutes.
That's your cold open?
Yeah, that's
You were
it.
like, I have something. And I said, okay.
We were literally just, saying nothing for like 4.5 minutes
I was like,
with me doing that voice.
What is there to talk about?
before we started
There's
to
nothing
record.
going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was great. We're talking about the Night House today.
We should do that every time we cover a horror movie. We should do like a dumb voice for the little information at the beginning.
Sure.
So yeah, this...
Was that supposed to be scary?
No.
I'm just making sure.
Were you scared? Tell me honestly.
I was terrified.
You remember Rex?
My
No.
heart went pitter-patter.
You're doing the wrong reference. Ooh,
Whoa.
Maggie burped.
That was
do you
absolutely
remember,
you.
Do you remember Toy Story? You remember Rex?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, I had a big plastic Rex when I was a boy, and if you pressed a button on his side, he said, "Were you scared? Tell me honestly."
Okay. So that's in your brain
I
forever.
also had a big plastic Spider-Man who had like webbing in his armpits,
Ew.
like connecting them.
Wait, ew.
Like it was like part of a doily in his armpit.
I don't like
And
that
if you
at
pressed
all.
his button, he would say, "Out of web fluid." Or I think the other one was everyone's favorite wall crawler.
Well, I had an actual Woody, and he did the whole, there's a snake in my boot, and all that, and bullseye. I don't think I had any of the other ones, though, just Woody.
The packaging, do you remember the packaging Buzz was in? Where
In
it
the
looks
movie?
like a spaceship?
Yeah,
They actually sold him in that.
exactly. Like
Which
that's,
is-
that's the way to do it.
That's fantastic
Yeah.
branding. Like there's a reason that Disney's a $1 trillion company.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. They made this film.
Yes, this is
Can you imagine if Disney had made this
Pixar's
movie?
latest.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so
Starring Tim Allen.
so new indie horror movie, The Night House.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to
Not
love here.
starring Tim Allen,
There's
to
a
be
lo-
clear.
We are on different wavelengths
I want to
today.
make sure that we are clear and that no one thinks that we think that Tim Allen stars in this film.
It's like I keep trying to change lanes and Maggie speeds up a little in the next lane
you're,
every
you're
time.
changing lanes without turning on your blinker, and so I don't know you're changing lanes. Or as you would call it, directional. That's
So
what
the
you
Night
New
House.
Englanders call it.
Night House, new movie, horror movie. We saw...
You're really mean to me when you just skip over what I say.
There was the first obvious connection to what we do here, and especially Lord of the Rings, is I think...
Are you actually just continuing to
I
plow
am
on?
blowing past
I really thought you were going to make a joke there.
No. So Lord of the Rings,
Okay.
big thing we talk about, especially the last couple months, is echoes, what Maggie's called perversions or twisted echoes, kind of where they corrupt things, and usually it's by making them evil, as we've kind of marched towards Sauron here.
Yes.
The premise of this movie, The Night House, is sort of that other world, the perversion of all the things you know and love.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not gonna talk spoilers till about halfway through, but
Yeah, we'll let you know.
we're gonna talk basic premise stuff. And there's this idea that a woman, her husband dies, and she's in this house, and she starts to see that there's another version of the house with like an inverted floor plan.
See, I think that's too much. You don't think you should have said
No,
that?
it's fine.
I think it's really better if you don't know
Go watch the
anything.
movie if you don't want to be spoiled at all. If you're okay
it's too
with
late now.
light
Cam's
premise
ruined it for you.
descriptions, then deal with it. And then spoiler stuff in the second half after
Okay.
you've seen the movie.
I'm sorry. I just thought it was better if we didn't say too much.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we're so attuned to picking up on the echoes, I think, from close to reading Lord of the Rings, but there's also a shade of like Gatsby to it, which I know you've never read because Maggie doesn't know how to read.
No, but I know the references. Like I know the green light. Like I know.
I mean, there's an echo here to the Grey Havens too, where you have to like cross a body of water to get to this whatever it is, whatever the night house is.
Yeah.
She glimpses it like across the lake from her real house, and that was sort of the Gatsby reference of seeing the green light and seeing something unknown in the distance. And there's a lot here that isn't over-explained, which we'll get to later. But I really appreciate that because I hate the endless dry clarifications
Yes.
of the unknown.
Yeah. I don't like being spoon-fed, and I don't like over. Oh my God, Exposition, over exposition.
Actually, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay,
so
yeah.
And this is more of a horror movie commentary than it is about Lord of the Rings. I tied it to Lord of the Rings. I'm done with that now.
I want everyone to know that Cam is overheated right now. So he just pulled up his pants above his knee like a little 18th century boy. Going to go play with a hoop in the street or something. Yeah, like I
have to crawl into a machine in a Dickens book.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're 5 minutes in and I'm already 200 degrees. So yeah, let's we're just going to talk about horror stuff now.
Yeah.
So one of the most, I think, annoying and avoidable modern horror pitfalls that this movie so like beautifully avoids is the scene where the character squints at a laptop doing research that gives us an exposition dump of everything that we need to know.
And it just zooms in on different important keywords about all the different things happening.
I can picture it. And when I was writing these notes, I was picturing like 4 different movies with the exact same shots.
Yeah,
because there was
always like the music. It's like do 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 do, and their eyes are going back and forth over the screen.
Yeah, like
do you remember in The Amazing Spider-Man when Andrew Garfield is, Peter is looking online, learning about spiders, and he uses Bing to search instead of Google?
I think that
has stuck with me.
I think that's because Sony made those, so they didn't want to throw it to Google.
No, that's why. But it's the funniest thing. I'm sorry. It's never left my brain.
So it's like a character confusedly dumps 2 pages of exposition on the audience. Yeah. And I think the thing that's achieved by these scenes is an explicit outlining of all of the rules of the magic system.
You're saying it does do that?
That's what it does.
I don't think it's explicit at all.
No, I don't mean this one. I mean that scene.
I'm sorry, I'm lost. Woo.
That scene traditionally in horror movies, when it's done poorly, it's just telling you all the rules.
Yes,
it's giving you the bumpers in a game of bowling.
Yes.
And I think it's frustrating because it'll show you something cool. I'm a sucker for woodcuts. You know that with the Faustus thing. And I love old like statues and figures and stuff. And it'll always show us that while like the sidekick character narrates all the rules of the magic system.
Yeah.
It's okay, but once you recognize it, I think it starts to drag down movies. And there are a couple examples lately, like this movie, that avoid that pitfall and do it much better. I was thinking of Sinister, which we watched in the last year, where the protagonist is desperate. It's not like a moment of calm after a scary thing where they're trying to brush up on whatever Eastern, old mythology informed whatever demon it is. But the Ethan Hawke character in Sinister is so desperate, and he finds such limited information.
Yes,
that
right.
It serves to like heighten the tension instead of almost relieving it and giving us a sense of security and safety. Right.
I mean, they do kind of lean heavily on the professor character that he has video chats with.
Yeah. So he finds limited information on his own, and then he has to reach out to an expert. And this is the other part of the trope, right?
Yeah.
If it's not Googling, if it's not just sitting in front of a laptop,
expert comes in and tells you everything.
It's the expert.
Yeah.
I mean, Paranormal Activity does this.
Yeah.
Most like exorcism movies, if that's sort of the classic horror thing,
they
do that with the priest. That's the role he's serving, and he becomes usually that mentor Gandalf figure where he eventually has to die so they can face the demon without like someone to splash holy water and protect them.
Right.
And here in Sinister, the expert, yes, he gives Ethan Hawke a little more information, but mostly he's a really good hype machine for the monster.
Yeah, I think if anything, you're right, he doesn't give us security of, okay, I understand it now. He makes it more scary because he's afraid of it also.
And so they're talking over Skype, and they both have really dark backgrounds.
I kept expecting something to like jump out behind the professor in the video.
It serves the horror. It's not safe and dry and boring.
Right.
The other recent example that does this well, before we see how the Night House did it, is the third Conjuring movie.
Oh, yeah.
Where they have the expert, the guy they have to go visit who has all the demon stuff in his basement.
Oh, yeah.
They make him connected to the main villain of the movie. So while they're there, things dovetail into the main plot. And he becomes like an active, relevant character, not just like a left field plot device.
Yeah, it's not just a random thing like, well, we need exposition. Let's throw in this character. Like he serves a larger purpose. So that's nice.
In the Night House, there is a section of Googling just for her to find a location she has to go to. But then she finds characters and more mysteries there. It's not like a clean info dump.
No, never. I mean, and even at the end, everything is pretty ambiguous. Like, you understand things a bit better, but it's never over-explained, and I like that. I like that it's open to interpretation, and you might think that one thing is happening, but maybe another thing is happening, and we're not ever gonna really know, and I like that.
The mythology of whatever the bad thing is in this world is anchored by a statue. Which it's great because the design of the statue was really troubling to me.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Yeah, but I didn't like looking at it.
I loved looking at it, but it bothered me.
Yeah,
and it's like a human figure, and the second you see it, you know it. Like, you know, at some point it has to serve a larger purpose.
Okay, I'm just trying to caution you from saying too much.
I'm not.
And if you keep looking, like
I've already said, if you don't want to see anything, go watch the movie first. But if you're okay with innuendo, then keep listening.
I'm just saying we have a distinct spoiler section later on.
I know, and I'm not talking about the ending yet.
Okay,
but it has this like troubling design, and it's not explained. So it just, that imagery keeps you hooked in the same way the woodcut would in the like cheap laptop-y scene.
Yeah.
I think it's a good hook for the mythology.
Right. Well, yeah, I will say that because I was trying to think, like, this movie, I wouldn't say it's original. It feels like a mix of a lot of movies. And one movie I was thinking that it reminds me of is Hereditary. But I think that's as good as Hereditary is, that is a fault, is the way it does the exposition dump for the lore, for the magic, the demon system that's going on. Like, there's way too much of that in Hereditary. And it's like, it's not that it's fully explained, like, it's still kind of confusing at the end, but there's too much of it. It's like, why did we need to do all of this?
And the majority of it in Hereditary, and this was the first time I watched it, it didn't really work for me. I liked it a lot more the second time, but maybe that was because I'd already seen it.
Yeah, so you were like ready for the disappointing ending.
No, I didn't. That's what I'm saying. I didn't find it disappointing the second time. The first time, the thing that threw me was I felt like a lot of that mythology and explanation came in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Where I thought it was going to be a clearer example or a clearer explanation for what was happening, or it just wouldn't be explained.
Yeah.
And then I felt like they threw all this mythology at us right at the end, where I was kind of confused and kind of let down. But when I watched it the second time, I saw all the little symbols and, like the statue in the Night House, I saw how they were building it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And I really don't think I ever would have gotten that on the first viewing, but seeing it
you're
for the
right.
second time.
It's throughout the film. It's just very subtle and you don't notice it upon the first watch.
And I think the Night House does, I agree that it reminded me of other things, but in the same way, every great new piece of art is like acknowledging or building on the shoulders.
I didn't mean that as a criticism.
But you can tweak things and reinterpret things that have become formulaic or stale. And in the same way, this movie dodges that laptop research pitfall. I think it sees other things, modern movies like Hereditary, or I'm going to talk about The Witch later. I think the way it zigzags away from those makes it a really compelling, smart script. I thought it was a really deft, clever movie.
Yeah.
Even if you can see the lineage, which I'm always fine with. But going back to the mythology and how it sort of played out here, I mentioned that statue. But as far as like actual documents or pieces of information, it's drip fed through the movie, and they always feel like revelations. Like the premise of the movie is that her husband died. That's not a spoiler.
No,
that's in the trailer.
It's in the first 30 seconds.
So as she's trying to figure out a mystery that involves possibly her husband, she looks through his stuff.
Yes.
And every time you do that, you disguise whatever exposition or like information you're going to find there with the heart-wrenching emotion of going through a dead person's stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that's why this movie is so fun, is because it's the whole tone of it is like, it's scary and psychological, but it's overlaid by the emotion of the grief.
Right. And like maybe the clarity you're going to find is worse than the unknown. So much of this movie like expertly handles the terror of the unknown and the dread of like finally looking at the monster.
Yes.
And this is not a monster movie.
No.
But as we'll talk about in the spoiler section, it kind of is.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah.
But yeah, the last point here about the laptop thing, I love that the entire runtime of the movie, they kept introducing new mysteries.
Yeah, I know. It was so twisty. Like, you think it's going to be one thing, and then it's another thing, and then it's actually another thing. Like, you really can't tell what... Because a lot of times in a horror movie, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is going to be a monster movie. Or, oh, okay, this is going to be a mystery. Or, oh, this is going to be a serial killer. Or whatever. And you really don't know in this one.
And whether it's like seeing people you don't recognize, people showing up out of nowhere, sudden sounds that are repeating, communication that shouldn't be possible. Like, I'm trying to obscure all these things. Some of those events are explained later, but some of them only make sense sort of by inference after a revelation you get later. So after you see the movie, you can think back on it, and then it kind of makes sense. But some of the things are never explained.
Right,
and they're
exactly.
just really intriguing images that serve the mystery without, like... I don't like when a movie is so... Like Crawl. We talked about... we went to see Crawl, or we rented it a couple months ago. It's a movie about like an alligator apocalypse.
Yeah, it's fun.
And the first scene is meeting the girl, and she's an accomplished swimmer.
So you're like, oh, okay.
You know that's
she's gonna
like,
swim away from the alligator.
As much as I like echoes and callbacks, I don't like when everything is there to serve a convenient, practical purpose.
Yeah, then it feels a bit too contrived.
And some of these things never being clarified or explained, I think that serves the movie, not only because it constantly keeps me hooked and interested in new, like, what was that? But, like, life and the cosmos and the afterlife and demon stuff, like, none of that is ever fully explained.
Right, and that's what she's battling with this whole time, is, like, what happens after death? What does it all mean? What was my husband like when he was alive? What did I not know? Like, it's all very unclear.
And it's not unsatisfying. It's not confusing or a letdown or just like a gesture at ambiguity.
Right.
It's just some minor freaky stuff isn't fully explained later. And that's okay.
Yeah, I do have some problems with some of the lore stuff, but I'll talk about it in the spoiler section.
Okay.
But I don't want to forget about that. But no, I did also really... You're right. I liked that you don't always... Things aren't always explained. And especially that's just... heightened by her Beth, the main character. First of all, Rebecca Hall.
That's what I was going to talk
did
about
an
next.
Amazing job.
Yeah, we just got to talk about her for a bit.
But I was going to say she's very much an unreliable narrator. She's drinking for probably 70% of the movie. Like, it's always on her. She's always on screen, and she's like drinking or asleep or dreaming, or there's some element of her that's not right and that's not fully sober.
Yeah.
And so you're not always sure what's happening and what's real and what she's seeing and what's actually occurring. And I really like that because it adds to the ambiguity and it helps us understand maybe why she's seeing what she's seeing.
Yeah.
I really like when a horror movie that has supernatural elements gives you a potential out. Like in The Witch, when they're harvesting their corn and the corn is all rotten, there's like a fan theory that they could have hallucinated everything.
Yeah.
Because they're having hallucinations from the corn.
Yeah.
And I like that. And it's never explained. It's not like that's the secret behind the movie and that's what Robert Eggers really meant. It's just a potential explanation that you could interpret.
I think there's a theory about Hill House that there's like black mold in the house.
Yes. And that's also making them
all delirious.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. Then we'll just go nuts about Rebecca Hall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree that there are better horror movies, and I know you have more problems with this than I do. I just think I thought it was pretty exceptional.
No, I really liked it. I'm not at all saying it was bad.
But I think there's one element of this movie besides Rebecca Hall's performance that might be like the greatest I've ever seen in a horror movie. It's the transitions into dreams.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not
really
doing
well
any...
done.
That's not a spoiler.
Yeah, no,
there's a lot of this that's dreams. You mentioned that with the drinking. And I mean, with the Night House, with that like mirror universe, that's the dream sequences. Like that's how you can believe the surreal stuff. And it never felt cheap. And I feel like dream sequences feel cheap in movies when the character wakes up and whatever bad stuff just happened didn't really happen, so everyone's fine. Like, it neuters the dramatic stakes.
Right.
But here, you're always learning something. You're getting, like... I never thought, she might die in the dream sequence part. It was always, she's learning something really bad.
Yeah, and which like could actually be true in real life. And so then when she's awake, that's what's haunting her.
And there were times where she fell asleep and I was just so captivated by her performance, I didn't think, okay, we're in dreamworld now. And I only noticed when things started to get surreal. Like, it was such a smooth... There's so many shots in this movie that just hold on her face as the world just explodes around her. And she's so good that I don't notice that we're switching back to the world with the red moon.
Yeah, right.
It's so... Like, it's a compliment to the editing, of course, the writing, the directing, and Rebecca Hall. But this, I think on a subliminal level, having all the scary stuff, I mean, at least at first, happen in the dream world, it means that you've got this really powerful human grief story in her waking hours, and then bad, scary stuff in the nighttime.
Right. It's not like those other horror movies where it's like, during the daytime everything's happy and funny, like just a lighter horror movie, especially if it like features teenagers. Like during the day they're joking and it's fun, and then at night things get bad. Like it's just bad the whole time for her.
And having those be the only two options for her existence, it endlessly heightens or deepens, whatever the right word is, Beth's exhaustion.
Yes.
Because she never gets to rest.
No.
She never gets to recover. And to the horror element, she never gets a chance to process the newest trauma.
Right.
Which means that over this, I mean, I pointed out the runtime because I always like when horror movies are under 2 hours. I think they can become more of like a sprint. And that's usually more effective for me.
Yeah.
This movie snowballs. With all those new traumas, because she never gets to rest. By the end, it's got this like debilitating sense of inertia.
Yeah.
It was really powerful. Like, I'm not new to horror. I still get freaked out by stuff, which is why the genre has such a hold on me.
Yes.
But I was like squeezing my fists and gritting my teeth through parts of this.
I was very tense throughout the whole thing. Like, it wasn't the scariest movie I've ever seen, but it was very atmospheric and very tense, and the jump scares are few, but really effective. I was very nervous the entire time.
There were some really like transcendent moments here where, like you said, she's drinking a lot through it, which sort of makes her perspective more unreliable, or just slows down her reaction time. So as things are snowballing, she's getting more delirious. Like the script always feels tight and efficient. Yeah. But this deluge of events and freaky images, they start to slur together. Like, I was trying to kill a bug yesterday, and I was thinking about the difference between like a slasher movie, like Michael Myers just Rob Zombie described his Michael Myers as punching people with knives.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it perfectly encapsulates. It's a great movie.
It's great.
That is one type of horror, just stomping on a bug. This was smearing it across the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And I like I love both of them.
Dragging it out.
But this one is very much my kind of thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was punchy in a way, but it was very much a drawn out, slow burn. But you're right, it does snowball and it does escalate. Like, it's not boring or anything.
I think this style of horror asks a lot more from the lead.
Yeah.
And Rebecca Hall...
Oh my gosh, she's so good. I can't believe how good she was.
We have to talk about her relative to other leading women in horror.
Yeah.
And I think any lead in grief horror. Because this is sort of in that subgenre. It's not just that she goes through like the emotional ringer here, dealing with the grief and then dealing with the fear, never getting to rest. That part you could compare to Hereditary.
Yeah,
which is its
Toni
own...
Collette, who does an amazing job.
And Toni Collette's performance, it's like an expressive gauntlet, where she's bouncing between extremes as like people are set on fire, or she has a flashback to almost killing her kid. Like, all those things are spiraling. Here, because it's that like smearing the bug across the wall, there's a fury to it. The sense of like snowballing, I thought was fascinating. People talk about the transition Walter White takes in Breaking Bad as like growing more evil and unforgivable by degrees.
Yeah.
I think this performance is more like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She does have to undergo a bit of a change as the movie goes on.
And there are moments where she like confronts a woman who might have had an inappropriate relationship with her husband, which invokes like a rage that's very human and not at all like horror related.
Right.
But it like carries a sarcasm and bitterness that is absolutely echoed back from the loss of her husband. Eventually you find out how he died.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say her performance never, even though it's like it's a horror movie, it's dramatic things happening. Her performance is never over dramatic.
No,
it's incredibly believable and subtle and nuanced. And like one of my favorite things, and I said this to you when we left the movie, was how like her like bitter humor.
Yes,
when she's talking about her husband dying, she's like making really like upsetting jokes.
Yes,
as like I guess a way to cope. And like that to me felt so believable because she's so like angry at the people around her who don't understand her situation, like understandably. And so she's just like being mean to people and making them uncomfortable, but like not in a like she's not yelling at anybody.
No.
You know, it's never like overdone. It's never over aggressive. I mean, she has some really big acting moments, but they're earned and are few.
Yeah, it never feels like Oscar bait. Like the first thing I saw her in was Parade's End, which is a period piece miniseries. She was starring opposite Benedict Cumberbatch. And it was about, I guess their relationship, it was about like a failing marriage, but long enough ago that rights were limited, right? So her character, like she had a bit of restrained humor, less than she does here.
Yeah.
But the thing that I remember from that performance is this transcendent frustration. And she totally evolved that work here.
Yeah.
And in a modern setting, it felt so refreshing.
Yeah.
It was an extremely human representation of grief, but also just the way she interacted with other people.
Yeah.
There was a level of comfort that felt so natural and human. I mean, it felt like how really comfortable podcasters talk.
Sure.
Or I don't know, just like friends in real life. The way people talk about Marlon Brando being like a revolution for acting because it was so naturalistic and honest and sloppy. I felt that here.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't really get that because I wasn't alive at that time, but as much as I can understand the metaphor, I think that is what this felt like.
Yeah, right.
Because she was irritable at the whole situation.
Yes.
Losing her husband, eventually finding out how she lost her husband. The way friends didn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And she kind of toyed with it and made people uncomfortable with it. It was so...
But you can still see that she knows they're trying to help, and so she feels bad. Like, it's such a nuanced performance.
It was so really vulnerable. And she felt, like, by the end, she's kind of irritable at the bad thing. Whether it's a demon or a ghost or whatever it is.
Yeah.
She's irritable at it, but it's not in a comedic way.
Right. It's not like being funny. It's not the end of Evil
campy.
Dead. It's not, you know, what's the line at the end of the Evil Dead remake? Chew on this or...
Yeah, something like that.
Chew on this motherfucker. It's funny.
But
it's not that at all.
It's such a like mercilessly grounded humor. She's so beat down that all she has is kind of bitterness and sarcasm. And it all furthers that exhaustion. The same way she never gets a break when she goes to sleep. She has, like, the humor serves this spiraling, exhausted rage of the character.
Yeah.
It was just a perfect performance.
Yeah, I mean, if we had that discussion a few weeks back about honest art and what that means, if anything is honest, however we define that, her performance certainly was. It was really effective.
And regardless of... you know, whatever parallel it has to her personal life. Yeah. It was just a really good performance.
No, I didn't even mean about her personal life. I just meant true to life in general. Relatable, believable. It was great.
She's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, she's the best part of the movie. It's all good, but she's the best part.
She really elevates it.
Yeah, I think if it had been a lesser actress might have really brought the movie down. I think it was very dependent on her performance because it's on her the whole time. Because even like in Hereditary, we cut to the kids sometimes or with other characters. Like she's in every single scene. Yeah,
there's no character like the son in Hereditary who's sort of a second lead. Here, it's really just her.
Her.
Like this... You know how there are movies that have come out in the last couple months, like, oh, that was a COVID movie. Like, there's only ever two people in a scene, and they're always kind of 10 feet apart for no reason.
For no reason, yeah.
This didn't feel like that. It felt like a stage play that was really good.
It did feel a lot like a play, yeah.
And I'm sure it was filmed a while ago, because things keep getting delayed forever.
It came out in 2020, like early 2020, I think. And then things got moved around.
Oh, okay.
Like, it was
interesting.
It was, I think it premiered at a festival, like, end of 2019. So they did it a while ago. So,
but it was interesting because I'm used to seeing those things now, those like pandemic projects, and this was just so good, and happened to have that scarcity, intimacy, and I like spare horror. Yeah. And this nailed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it I have for the non-spoiler section. Do you want to move into the spoilers?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to talk about The Witch.
Yeah. What? Why?
Because the ending reminded me of The Witch.
How?
Well, I'm so glad you asked,
wow.
Maggie.
Sorry, sometimes I can see where you're going, and in this case, I absolutely could not. I don't really see what you mean at all. Because at the end, she survives and doesn't go to the woods. Mm-hmm. So what do you mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked,
She also
Maggie.
doesn't kill anybody.
So...
I'm lost.
That's not the part I meant.
Yeah, I see that.
So it's fragments in the same way.
Wait, you said this to me the other day. Now I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I did. We kind of usually we try to not say all of our best points before we record because then it sounds fake, trite and boring. Yeah, and you don't have a reaction to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we were kind of riffing in the car. So
but we weren't planning on talking about this.
Yeah.
For on the show, I mean, that's why we were talking about it in real life, in the podcast of life.
It's a really we took a while to write up notes for this. Yeah. And the reason we wanted to talk about it is this movie did not make much money.
Yeah.
It really should have. And I know the pandemic box office is its own sort of money mess.
And it's a whole thing. Yeah.
But in the same way we wanted to spotlight Green Knight, this is independent horror. Mm-hmm. It's, more importantly, non-franchise horror.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get that benefit.
It's not James Wan.
And it's not part of A24. So it doesn't
which has its own special...
Yeah, brand identity.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's just its own random little movie. And it was so good. And
it's amazing.
Want people to know about it.
And it's going to be on... you'll be able to rent it in October.
On where, do you know?
Everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Video on demand kind of stuff.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
okay, I see what you're saying.
I looked that up just so I could.
Oh, that's good.
Tell
Perfect
people
for
that.
Halloween. That's great.
Yeah, so support this because it didn't do nearly as well as it should have, and the performance is it's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Witch.
Okay, yeah. Tell me what do you think?
So the ending of this movie. Seriously, don't listen to this part if you haven't seen it. Go watch it.
No, turn this off right now. Yeah.
Come
back.
The husband Owen. It's the demon speaking through him.
You think it's a demon?
Yeah.
I think it's just death.
No, I don't think it's death. I think it's... I'll talk about Faustus later. Okay, I happen to have another point about the movie being a Faust story.
Of course you
That's
do.
what these episodes are.
Do you just try to do that every time we watch something? You're like, honey, how can I make this a Faust story?
No, honey, I don't try to do it. It just happens in my brain now.
Okay.
But we're going to get to that. So
I don't think you've ever called me honey in the entire time I've known you.
No.
This is a special moment. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we have it not right.
Okay. We'll revisit that.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, it's this otherworldly entity who I read as a demon speaking through the husband who we know is dead. And his audio is mixed really flat. He's speaking through Owen's voice.
You think it's flat?
Yes, as in it was kind of expressionless. And it felt...
Well, that's his performance. That's not the mixing.
No, but it sounded like it was recorded in a booth. It was very still. There wasn't really anything in the background.
But it still felt like it was really, big. Not loud, but, low. I felt it in my chest. I wouldn't say it was flat
I meant that it was produced such that I heard it, or my ear kind of reacted differently than I did to Beth talking opposite him.
No, yeah, it sounded different. I don't know how to describe sound things, but flat is not a word I would have used.
Otherworldly.
Okay.
Let's settle on that.
Okay.
So it was different than her. Yeah. So there is this other kind of thing talking, and it reminded me of Black Phillip's voice at the end of The Witch.
Yeah, that one also feels very rumbly and in your chest.
And there wasn't much emotion in the way he was speaking. It was very deliberate and slow and inhuman.
Almost deadpan, right, yeah, without emotion.
Inhuman, yeah. And the conceit of that moment here at the end of The Night House, you're finally getting that shot of seeing the monster. Mm-hmm. This is your moment of clarity. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at Owen. You're seeing Owen. You're hearing Owen. But you know it's not Owen.
Yes,
that's... Right. And it's such a beautiful challenge, I think, to the audience. The way The Witch does it is different. You hear the spurs of Black Phillip walking.
Yeah, you hear his boots on the floor.
You see him sort of in the shadow, in the background, walking around Thomas, and he almost looks like a pirate.
Yeah, right? Very swashbuckly.
You see his gloves on her shoulder. You see fragments or details of him where you can believe, okay, this is some kind of big demon thing.
Yeah,
The difference here is the unblinking intensity that disoriented me sort of as a viewer, where I know it's Owen, I'm hearing Owen, but I know it's not Owen. It makes you stare at a character that you don't know, but you've spent 2 hours learning about. Mm-hmm. And it was like inviting me as a viewer to reject my reality, which is so much what the movie's about.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Like, you do see this other world, the Night House world with the red moon.
You can see it before your eyes. Yeah.
You see all the other brunettes run by Beth.
And it feels very real when she's seeing it. It's not like, because I wanted to say this earlier, but I was worried it'd be too spoilery. Yeah. Like the dream sequences aren't like her waking up and everything's all misty and things are floating and like she's the clear like point of reality and everything else around her is dreamlike. Like it all feels very real when it's happening. And the only reason you know it's not is because it's impossible.
Like she gets to this point before we do. When she's looking at the photograph of the woman in the bookstore and everyone says, that's you, it's obviously you. Yeah. The face is kind of turned away and the hair is the same. Yeah. She says, that's not me. Yeah. So she makes that effort to like reject reality or apparent reality.
Oh, sure.
And everyone around her thinks she's crazy.
Yeah.
And we're not sure what to believe because she's going through a lot.
Especially because we're being carried through her perspective the whole time. So we're inclined to believe her over anybody else.
But for the climax of the movie to be us rejecting a reality, I think that's a beautiful moment of unity between us and a protagonist who's on screen the entire film.
Yeah.
Like I identified with her even more. I was even more invested in her position.
Yeah, yeah.
And it happens while the movie is like kaleidoscoping between day and night. She's sitting on the boat opposite Owen and you're cutting between the real world in morning, like the morning time, not M-O-U-R.
Yeah.
Where people are running to the edge of the water to try to help her. And then you're cutting back to the Night House world with the red moon, with the demon talking to her. And they're happening at the same time, and she's rejecting one. Like, she's fighting a metaphysical dissonance and rejecting that red moon reality.
That's the way she survives, is by rejecting that reality. Exactly.
It's such an interesting breaking point. Like, the hook isn't suggestion or restraint. It's dealing with the truth and falsity of these twin realities and the discomfort of seeing them at the same time, of jumping between nighttime, daytime, and staring at this character who you know isn't real. It gave me the same discomfort as the close-ups of Aragog in Chamber of Secrets. Because that I didn't want to be real, and I didn't know why it was so. I mean, it felt like he was staring at me. It felt like a fourth wall moment. Like
you feel invaded.
And it's like a perversion of the House of Cards Fleabag thing, where you feel more intimate with the protagonist because they keep talking to you or looking at you. This felt like Aragog staring at me, and I wanted to get away from that.
Yes.
But the Owen thing, I just felt it really put me in her position. I loved that.
Yeah, no, that I did really like that part. That was good. So wait, I need to. Okay, you think it's not? You think it's just a demon instead of like death?
Well,
what made me sort of laugh was at the end, like the movie ended and I was like, this was the same concept as Final Destination.
What do you mean?
Death has been cheated, and so it needs to take another soul. And so that's what Owen was trying to do, because Beth survived this near-death experience. Like she was, they restarted her heart, and so like death was cheated, and so Owen is trying to not kill her, is trying to kill others in her place. It's the same thing. I mean, obviously this is a great execution of it, and I'm not like saying the movie fails for that reason, but I think it's funny. That's all I'm saying. So that's maybe why I'm categorizing the big bad as death and not just a random demon, because it's death trying to take Beth back.
Yeah, I read it as, I mean, basically the thing occupying Owen is Mephistopheles. That would be the demon who almost took possession of her soul when she died during the near-death experience. And now he's trying to like.
Oh, you don't think it's about her dying? You just think it's about possession?
I think he almost got her because she almost died. And then the thing we find out in the climax of the movie is that Owen has been killing women who look like Beth as an attempt to like satiate that demon who wanted that particular soul.
So in this mythology, the demon can only possess Beth if she's dead?
Well, I think that's, taking the soul down to hell.
So then what's happening with Owen? Because that's his whole thing, is he's being like possessed or coerced or something by this thing is what's making him do all this.
Well, yeah, I would suggest that that's not Owen. It's just like that's the form that would catch her attention.
But then where's Owen? I'm saying when he was alive. When he was alive. Like when he was killing all those women.
He was making a free choice to try to alleviate the, demon's desire for Beth's soul.
But I'm saying during that time, he's aware of the demon's desire for Beth's soul. So what's happening to him there? Is he being possessed? Like what's happening there?
He's he's suddenly aware of the situation and he's making a choice.
Okay.
Basically, he's trying to cheat the contract, that typical like Faustian bargain.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying, because I was just trying to get around possessing and what that means, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's possessing. I think it's just the demon using that like presentable face to her. Because her getting those texts and things at the beginning of the movie from her husband, she's going to respond more than if it just says nameless demon.
I understand that. I'm wondering what made you decide it was a demon rather than just death. Like, why does it have to have a religious thing?
It doesn't.
I guess it doesn't have to. Demons don't have to be Christian.
In horror, it's not. Demons aren't always religious anymore.
Why can't it just be death? Because it's so ambiguous and so convoluted that why can't it be a bigger concept like death?
Death as that like ferryman character, it can be. Yeah. And it serves the same Mephistopheles Faustus.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't make that big a difference.
It doesn't matter.
Do you think you just saw it as a demon because you were looking at it in a Faustian lens?
Well, no. I saw the movie as a really fun reversal or mirror, I guess, perversion of the contract scene that is the opening of Dr. Faustus.
Mm-hmm.
And here, because she's not signing some explicit contract giving over her soul at the beginning, instead of Mephistopheles winning in the first scene and then the rest of the play being how does Faustus get out of this bargain?
Yeah.
This story is Mephistopheles, or the character inhabiting Owen, as the pursuer.
Uh-huh.
And the Faustus character here, Beth, isn't damned the whole time.
Right. It's about her trying to avoid becoming damned.
And it's her
avoid being dragged down to hell.
It's her finding out the rules. Because the second Faustus tries to conjure a demon in like the opening scene, and then the demon shows up, it's game over. Right? He knows it's all real.
Yeah.
Beth doesn't know it's all real till the very end.
Yeah.
When things are explained.
Yeah.
And so that tension of the Mephistopheles character pursuing the Faustus character becomes like a seduction. Her grief,
very much so.
Her grief is not only weaponized by the demon when he takes the shape of her dead husband, but it's betrayed when you find out why he died. And that the demon ruined the husband's life too.
Right. Well, and like she feels betrayed at the end because she had this hope that it was Owen as a ghost. Like when he calls her, when he texts her, and then even later in the movie when she's in the bathroom and he's like holding her. So she thinks it's him.
Yeah.
And so then it's that betrayal when actually it's not Owen at all. It's this other thing pretending to be him.
And in the spoiler section of the Green Knight episode we did, I talked about this conception of Dr. Faustus as a suicide play. And I think here that is sort of refracted into this story by Owen's pseudo-suicide.
Yeah. And then Beth's potential suicide at the end because she almost does that,
because that's what the choice is.
Right.
You're giving up the rest of eternity, basically.
Yeah.
And we haven't really talked about this part of it, but in Dr. Faustus, it's sort of like a Bride of Frankenstein scene. Frankenstein's the ultimate Faustus story. We'll do that another day.
That would actually be fun. We should do some Frankenstein stuff. That would be fun.
That one's like note for note. It's good.
Great.
Good job, Mary Shelley.
Awesome.
But this one, there's a scene in Faustus where Faustus wants a wife, so Mephistopheles conjures like Helen of Troy, who's supposed to be the most beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And then you can see the Bride of Frankenstein as sort of, the beast demands a mate. I love those old posters. It's very funny.
Yeah.
I saw that wig once, the Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, like the actual wig?
Yeah, it was very cool. There was a thing at the Morgan in New York. There was this whole exhibition of Frankenstein
That's right.
stuff.
I was so mad that I couldn't go to that.
It was really awesome.
In Iowa at the time. Anyway.
But the conceit there is that the woman, the like perfectly crafted mate, it's explicitly inorganic. It's crafted. It's fake, and it's on demand.
Yeah.
Owen killing like similar looking brunettes to try to make this form of woman that's close enough and fake and kind of a hodgepodge collage.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
That felt like an echo back to the Helen of Troy scene for me. And none of that has to be intentional, but this is how I have beaten my brain into seeing all these things.
No, that makes sense. That's
and
cool.
instead of the ending of Faustus, where he's dragged to hell after selling his soul, here, and I think this is what makes the movie more hopeful than most recent horror, the tragic but worthy hero, Beth, rejects the contract. And we see Mephistopheles, or whatever the thing is, death, whatever it is that's possessing Owen, we see it fail and recede back to hell or wherever else it comes from. And that's where the movie ends. Like, basically that she's going to have a rough life haunted by all these things.
Yeah, it's never implied that it's over now.
No.
And she's never going to, feel haunted by this stuff
Birds
ever
are chirping.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is so nice because that's even hinted at before. Like, when she's talking to her coworkers, like her other teachers, about her husband, and they're like, did he ever, exhibit any signs of, suicidal thoughts or anything? And she says, no, I always dealt with that kind of thing. And so this is just, another way to interpret depression.
Yes.
Is, death trying to get you to, come back to it, which I really like.
And the thing I infer about what happens after the movie ends, I think she's finally going to get to process all the trauma that has been snowballing through the movie.
Yes,
She's going to have to deal with all the bad stuff, and she's going to continue to have a really hard time. When you infuse the movie with that Brando-esque humanity and vulnerability and failing, things aren't going to be all chirpy, and you don't have to even pretend.
No.
It ends on such a human note of her support system, these two other cats, Claire and Mel.
You can tell that they're going to be there and they'll be able to help her, even though, especially, I loved Claire as a character.
Me too.
Because they so easily could have just done the bumbling, dumb friend who says stupid things and doesn't understand it all. And, in some ways, she is that. She doesn't know what to say, but you can tell she's really trying. And at the end, she kind of has her wits about her and is smart enough to understand, oh, the gun is missing. Beth is down in the boat. And, she jumps in the water and saves her and all this. So I liked I like when they make characters, real people and not just archetypes.
And the fact that it felt...
Especially women.
The fact that the ending felt so satisfying and you're so sure of kind of what was going to happen next without an epilogue scene, or in case of Lord of the Rings, 52 epilogue scenes.
Yes.
I think it does speak to the potency and efficiency of the script. Comparing it back to Faustus, after he gets dragged back to hell, there's the character who represents the chorus comes on stage and basically condemns everything he did.
Yeah.
You condemn the character, there's this moralizing monologue that ends the play. Here, because it's this earned proper victory, you don't need any of that. It just ends.
Yeah.
And the characters have been developed to the point, this is the one good thing that happens to her the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it feels so complete.
Yeah.
Part of wanting to do this, because this isn't part of a franchise, this isn't part of the Conjuring universe.
No,
or
it's
something.
not. Oh, there's still something out there. Let's zoom into the basement of horrors in the Conjuring movies, and what else could we do? There's none of that.
The end of this movie felt remarkably complete.
It did.
And even if it wasn't, maybe it wasn't as satisfying as it possibly could have been.
Yeah, not everything was answered, but
it felt clean and complete. I don't know. I just love a whole work of art, especially in the world of horror.
No, me too. And especially in movies, because like you're saying, everything is a franchise, everything is a sequel, everything is a derivative of something else. This just felt like its own thing. Yeah. And like we said earlier, it did, stand on the shoulders of Hereditary and The Babadook and even A Ghost Story, which I haven't seen, but you've talked about enough that I understand enough about it. But it still was its own thing, and I liked that.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right. No, I like this new trend that horror is doing of grief horror, basically, of talking about those types of concepts and ideas and experiences in horror, instead of it just being, plain old monster slasher movies are fun. Horror doesn't have to mean anything, but it's nice when it does. Is it okay if we now talk about a couple of things I didn't like? Yeah. That's I'm done with my notes now. I just, again, this movie was great. We just said it was great, but I felt like the voodoo. Voodoo's not the right word, but the magic stuff. I didn't know how necessary it was. I said this after we saw the movie together. I said the statue thing was cool and scary and effective, but I didn't feel like it. And maybe I'm just upset that it wasn't explained enough, but I feel like all the stuff in the book she found, all of the labyrinth, weird magic things going on, I didn't feel like it needed to happen. It didn't need to be there. She could have gotten to the bookstore some other way. to find the woman there and to get those answers. Like, I didn't feel like it felt like it was leading up to something, and then not much really happened other than she's sort of attacked at the end and is pulled into that same position as the statue, but then nothing comes of it. I just felt a little disappointed by it, and I didn't quite know why it was even in there other than to just like add spooky intrigue.
I just felt like it dovetailed into Owen killing all these women.
Yes, but he didn't need the weird labyrinth statue stuff to do that. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Well, the moment that I felt like the statue paid off, it wasn't even when Beth was pulled into that weird contorted position. Mm-hmm. It was when he was killing the other women in that like montage, and that's how he was binding them.
Yes, but I was like, but why? Like, I just didn't understand. I guess here's another question is, at first I thought all this weird magic stuff he's doing is like a result of like the demon death, whatever is whispering in his ear, telling him to kill Beth. I thought at first like he's like being told to like do research on this voodoo stuff and to go to this bookstore and to blah, 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 blah. But now thinking about it, I was thinking maybe he was trying to outsmart this demon death entity by like performing these rituals of like killing these women in this specific way. Like, that's like he was trying to out magic the magic thing. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe that makes a bit more sense, but I guess I just wanted to know what the specific magic system was and what function it was serving, you know? Because I was like, okay, what is this statue? What is it related to? And I guess maybe that would have been in the laptop research scene.
Yeah, this was the like, opacity I appreciated.
What does it mean? It was, I don't want it to be over-explained, but I felt it was under-explained, and I didn't feel like it served a real purpose, and it just felt like it was thrown in there just to be creepy.
I liked it. I mean, you're like a big fan of rules as well.
Yeah, but even the night house itself, the reverse world, I wanted that to be more explicitly flipped. I felt like they could have done more with that concept. Like when she's over at the flipped house, to me, I haven't seen enough of her real house to know that it looks flipped. Like, the only real thing I noticed that was different is there are other women in the house and the house numbers are flipped. But that's literally it. Like, the house doesn't look
There were some
opposite to
shots, especially of the second floor, that the design of the house is extremely asymmetrical, which is sort of fed by the staircase shooting up diagonally.
Yeah.
I noticed that, but yeah, I was glad there were more obvious pointers like the numbers.
Yeah, I wish they'd done a bit more, because that could have been really like unnerving. Like she goes into her bathroom and it's all flipped, or I don't know, just areas in the house that we've seen a lot that we would recognize as being flipped. I think that could have been more fun to play with, but again, I don't see how the reversal house, like otherworld, the upside down, whatever you want to call it, I don't see how that is connected to the labyrinths and creepy statue magic. Do you know what I mean? It just didn't all come together for me, and I was disappointed by that. And I wonder if maybe there were like deleted scenes or something that explain it a bit more, because I just felt a little let down by that.
I think we just have slightly different preferences. I understand that. I just didn't feel that way.
Yeah, because in some ways it is sort of a red herring of like, oh, it's not just weird voodoo magic, like it's actually this demon thing, in the same way that for a while you think he's just like a psycho serial killer. Which is a fun which I love.
Possibility, because it didn't feel like a misdirection, because he did kill a lot of women.
He did do that. That's what happened, but I think for a very different reason.
This is kind of it's related, but
okay.
I've been noticing this lately. And maybe this is just because I've been writing stuff like this, but when a story explores the road that they don't eventually take, and for a second there's a fake out of maybe we are going to go that way, and then things go the other way.
Yeah.
Sometimes that feels like I'm just being toyed with, so they can create like
just for the sake
pseudo-drama
of twists, to
keep things exciting. But sometimes it is really revealing and compelling, and there is an understandable indecision with the protagonist.
Yeah.
Here, I loved that because I thought it was going to be a misdirection of he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he was a serial killer.
Yes.
But the misdirection came later when Beth started crying because she missed him.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And then there was that hug. When she knew everything he did, and it didn't matter as much as getting him back. Like, it made this unbelievable character statement instead of doing this little like, haha, fake out. Wouldn't that have been cool?
Yeah, like they could have had her be like, oh no, I hate my husband. And then like,
I'm glad
saying,
you're dead.
Fuck you, mister.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but no, like they made it how an actual person. And that's also great with the serial killer thing is when you think it's just that, that's a logical thing. That's a thing that really happens. It's terrible and you don't want to think about it, especially your husband, but that's a real possible, not supernatural thing. So of course we and Beth think that at first. It's only when there's like, no, there's clearly some like magic, voodoo, supernatural, ghost, demon stuff going on that you start to understand that.
And that's the moment where the monster says, I'm not Owen.
Right,
like,
exactly.
That's the confirmation.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, it's like, there were parts that I was a little disappointed by, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's outweighed by all the good things. I just thought it was important to point out. It was great. I would love to, I'm so disappointed there's no, like, IMDb trivia anywhere or anything.
Yeah,
I haven't found any interviews or, like, anything.
I mean, it wasn't even promoted that much.
No, I want to know more about it, and it's frustrating.
And because of COVID, there wasn't much of a press tour, which is where people transcribe trivia from.
Yeah. So I'm hoping more like information about it comes out. I just want to hear interviews from David Bruckner and the writers
and Rebecca Hall.
Yeah.
So we're taking it upon ourselves to do the marketing for the movie.
Yes, you're welcome. Please pay us.
Hopefully, don't even pay us. Just go rent the movie.
No, not those people.
Great.
I mean,
Rebecca Hall.
Searchlight Pictures should pay us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sony.
How upsetting was it to see the intro and not see 20th Century Fox written on the big blocks of letters? It just said Searchlight Pictures. Did you notice that?
No.
I was very sad because now it's not called that anymore because everybody's buying everybody and there are only 2 companies in the world now.
Kids these days.
Oh gosh.
All right, cool.
Anyway, this was a great movie. Please watch it. It was awesome.
And
you said it's going to be out to rent in October. When in October? Like early or?
I think early.
Okay, great.
A couple weeks. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Cool. So we'll be back on Friday to do the first chapter of Return of the King. Back to Lord of the Rings, but we're going to keep doing these. Midweek.
These separate second breakfasts. Yeah, just more long form, more chance to talk about things in a more in-depth way.
There's a lot of art in the world.
There is. And we're going to talk about all of it.
We're going to curate the best just for you.
All right. We're on Instagram and it's in the description.
Email us your thoughts. Go see these movies. secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com.
Yes.
And we'll see you Friday or we'll see you next week for something, not Tolkien. All right, bye.
Okay, bye.